All right. Hey, everybody. I wanted to do a quick video on CZ75s and specifically my CZ75 and a bit of, I guess, a little bit of drama, I guess, I had going on with it, and a little bit of repairs and just some other going ons that have been going on with my pistol and a little bit of history, at least with me and my particular example. But also CC75s in general and what my experience has been with them. So yeah, just something that was on my mind. Just want to talk about it. So we'll start off first with my actual pistol. So this is what I have here. This is a CZ75B Omega model, and as far as I understand it, the differences with the Omega model is that it uses a different kind of trigger system, like back here, basically. That it's a little bit different, and they CZ claims it's like a simpler kind of system. It's better. It's improved, or whatever marketing thing they want to say that is trying to make it sell that it's better. All of the the polymer frame pistols, I think the P07 and the P09 utilize the Omega trigger system. And after firing an Omega trigger versus a regular trigger, uh, they feel honestly kind of similar, but different in a way. I don't know, it's hard to describe unless you've had trigger time behind it. But with the regular trigger, it definitely feels like you're engaging more surfaces. It feels more mechanical, like you can actually feel, all the surfaces as you're pulling the trigger. With the Omega, it's a little bit less. And if you really look into the inside of the gun here, you can definitely see. Maybe I'll take it apart too. That there's basically a whole lot of space in here in the receiver as compared to your traditional 75. So, bit of history with me in this gun. So I actually, for the longest time, I did not like CZ75s at all. I hated them because the original grips that normally come with this are like a black plastic, and they have like a bit of a swell in this area, and they just never fit my hands right. It was super uncomfortable. I just didn't like shooting these. I didn't like how they looked. I didn't like how small the slide was. I didn't like the way the hammer set back here. It didn't look and feel right to me. And I never really had a reason to own one because at the time, I didn't know a whole lot about CZ pistols because I've never owned one. And the general perception at the time was, oh, that's a hipster gun. That's for dudes who have soy lattes and usually wear flannel shirts and have like a man bun and all of that soy kind of hipster crap that I just honestly I do not subscribe to, as you can probably tell. But everything changed when a friend of mine, or at least he was a friend at the time, but that's a whole other story. He had a CZ75. And I was like, hey man, can I try it? Because yours looks a little different. He says, yeah, sure. So he had the wooden Cocobolo grips on his, and that thing freaking it got into my hand. I'm like, wow, this feels really good. And I started taking a couple shots with it. And my buddy at the time he was not a terribly good shot. He was relatively new to shooting. So at 10 yards, he was hitting maybe 4 or 5 inch groups, enough to hit somebody at that distance, but it wasn't what you would call really good accuracy. Well, I picked it up and I was really surprised at how light and crisp the single action trigger was on this. And man, I put it out there at 25 yards and I'm getting 3 to 4 inch grips. I'm not even trying, with just regular ammo. And I thought, wow, this is a really good gun. Now that it has better grips, fits my hand better. For all you Paul Harrell fans out there, it did fit my hand better. And I was really impressed with it from that point on. I thought, you know what, I got to get me one of my own. Well, at the time, I was testing out a Rex, Rex 01 pistol, which is basically a P226 clone, and I wasn't feeling it. It was a really good gun, and it was shooting better than my other friend's SIG 226 TAC Ops version that he had. That he spec'd out with all the short reset trigger, and he had all the fancy goodies on it. But I was out shooting him with my AREX Rec 01 pistol, and he was not having it. He was ticked off that some weird, I think it's Slovenian made, some weird Slovenian clone of his gun was shooting better than his gun, which is the real deal, and he was getting all sorts of mad about that. But anyway, that's a different story for a different day. But I had one of those on hand, and I basically put an offer up on my local arms list, and I said, okay, well, I'm looking for one of these, and willing to do a trade for it. Well, the guy who approached me had this exact pistol, and he said, I'm not the original owner. I'm like the second or third line. But the guy who owned it originally was a competition shooter, and he shot the absolute shit out of this gun. Like the wear marks on the inside of this gun are just, they're extensive, So I did a 1-for-1 trade, and honestly, I think I came out a little bit worse on that deal. But you know what? This gun has just, it has worked amazingly for me, with one exception, and I'll get to that in just a little bit. But did a 1-for-1 trade. It did not come with these grips. It came with the regular plastic grips, and I swapped those out immediately. And if anybody if you've been around CZ pistols long enough, there's like a million companies. Okay, well, maybe not a million, but there's plenty of companies out there that make aftermarket grips for these. So I was doing some research, and I found lock grips. Okay, this is G10. I think it's like the grenade pattern. And I happen to like blue, so I got blue grips for it. And this has absolutely like changed the entire feel of this gun. It is so much better for me. And I shoot this gun really well now. And I've had it ever since. So, but the history goes a little bit further. When I was out in the desert shooting with a friend of mine, and when I was shooting, it recoils back normally, and then I noticed the trigger wasn't resetting. I'm like, oh, that's weird. So I pushed the trigger back out, fire another round, and then when I noticed, what came flying out of the ejection port was the casing, but also it was a piece of spring, it almost looked like a paper clip, flew out of the gun. So I looked around, and I was like, oh shit, where'd that piece go? So I found it, picked it up, and then I was like, oh wow, that's pretty shitty. And then I realized my trigger was not resetting at all, and the hammer was also loose, and I was like, ooh, that's not good. So I did some more research looking into, and took it all apart, and what had broken was the trigger return spring and the I think it was the hammer return spring, or one of those springs, and I'm like, you know what, this is a little bit beyond my ability to fix myself, or at least I don't trust myself really to fix it. So I sent it into the gun shop, and they said, well, we can't really fix this ourselves, so we're going to send it into CZ. It got sent to the factory, and I waited for I don't know, almost 2 or 3 months for this thing to get back to me. And the repair bill was $120, and I was like, damn, why the hell is this $120 to fix this gun? That's a lot of money. So I got it back, and I took it all apart, and I was looking on the inside of this thing, and actually, I'm just gonna take it apart right now. So drop the mag, cock this, and so if you don't know how these take apart, on this slide right here, you'll see there's 2 notches right there. There's one on the receiver and one on the slide itself. It's very hard to see. It's a little bit faint, but it's right there in the back of the slide back here. So what you got to do is you have to hold this back in such a way that those lines match up. And then usually what I do is there's this pin right here. That's the cross pin. You got to hit that just right. So let me get these lined up. You got to hit that just right. Usually I take the base of a magazine, not a metal one, a polymer one, because if you take a metal one, you could scratch the frame. So I just take a polymer one and knock it out. And you see, it just comes right out. And then you got to fiddle with this thing to get the slide off. It's not always super cooperative. I'm not quite sure why, but there we go. Okay, so I took that apart, it's both pieces. So, yeah, there's the slide. So with 75s, the cool thing about it is that the rails are inverted from most other pistols, which some say contributes to the accuracy, reliability, etc., etc. So when I got it back, I was looking at all the parts on the inside, and I'll use my pencil here, and what I noticed was they had replaced this entire I think they call it like a sear cage. This whole assembly here, the whole sear assembly had been replaced. The trigger bar here had been replaced, and basically the hammer was replaced too. And what I think the ejector was replaced, and the firing pin safety block, which is this part right here, that was also replaced. And they had lubricated the barrel or finished the barrel with some kind of weird kind of gray finish. It was a little bit different from what I had sent it off to the factory for. But of course, none of these changes, these fixes, were made in the report log for the gun. So I had to figure all this out myself. And the only reason why I know is because all those parts are a different color from the rest of the gun, and I definitely don't remember them being that color when I sent it off. So to me, that says that they had replaced these with basically brand new parts. And also the wear marks had suggested that these are also new parts. So pretty cool of them to do that. And I just kind of wish the repair log was a bit more exhaustive when it came to what they actually fixed versus what they didn't. They did not do a very good job documenting that, but the gun is fixed. And the reason why I know that is because I took it out to the range and I tested it to make sure for function. The trigger's working just fine. It feels a little bit different, obviously, with the sear cage being replaced. It's going to feel like a new gun, and it definitely does. That's not a bad thing either. So the gun works just fine now. CZ fixed it, and for $120 with all the parts they replaced and the labor that goes into fixing one of these things, I can understand. Okay, that's $120, sure. So that covers my pretty extensive history with just this pistol, by itself. And this thing has just worked. It's just been a really, really, really good shooter. Even with the Omega system, that some people would say, oh, that's not as good as a legit, regular 75. Honestly, it doesn't really make a big difference to me. I shoot this as well as any other 75 I've shot, and in some cases I actually prefer this one because the double action is really nice. But yeah, my best grip I got with this was I want to say like 2.3 inches at 25 yards standing, unsupported. So this gun definitely will do the job. The accuracy is there. I mean, CZ is one of the few companies actually that does make cold hammer forged barrels for their pistols, so that's pretty interesting. A lot of manufacturers do not have that capability. Now, whether or not you subscribe to the mantra that cold hammer forged barrels are inherently better or more accurate, that's up to you. I've definitely seen it with this gun, but I've also seen that kind of accuracy with other pistols that do not have cold hammer forged barrels. So really, it goes back to, at least for pistols anyway, that pretty much every pistol out there can shoot better than the shooter can. And that's definitely true for this one. I know it can do better, but that's just a limit of my personal skill and ability with this gun, at least for the time being, because with the whole huge range of guns that I have, I do not practice on just one platform. So, having said that, yeah, so what else to say about this? If you don't know already about CZ75s, you've been living under a rock, honestly. And there's a whole lot of variants for this pistol. You got compact variants, you got the SP01, which is this huge, freaking massive dust cover with a big pick rail and everything. It's just a huge gun. Weighs like 1,000,000 pounds. And that's one of the great things about this pistol is it's one of the few steel framed pistols or metal framed pistols still available on the market today, because as we've seen, almost everybody and their mother wants to make a 9mm striker fired polymer frame pistol. Everybody and their mother wants to make one, and CZ is not they're not free from that criticism. They've made them too, but when it comes to metal frame pistols, usually you're paying a lot more, because it is a lot harder to machine out, or however they decide to make a metal frame pistol. It's a lot harder and more expensive to make a metal frame pistol than it is a polymer one. It just is. Now, that's the law of nature. But CZ somehow has made it in a way that even with their metal frame pistols, they've still come in at a very affordable and reasonable price, and if you ask me, a great value for what you're buying. I don't know how they do it. Maybe they've gotten the tooling and the process and everything down so well that they can afford to sell these cheaper. I don't know what it is. It's probably some kind of industry or trade secret. I don't know. Either way, I'm a happy customer, and I would gladly buy another metal framed CZ pistol in the future. It's just, you look at something like I don't know, a Beretta M9A3 or like a Langdon Tactical, right? That's another really famous like metal frame pistol that could occupy the same role as a 75. You'll be paying $800-900, $1,000 for something like that, whereas you can get, a pretty nice like I don't know, like a CZ75B Tactical with the higher sights and the threaded barrel and everything else. You can get one of those for like $650, $600 if you look hard enough. And to me, like, that's a really, really reasonable price for a metal frame pistol, which CZ just does really, really well at. And you could argue also too, it's like with their polymer frame pistols, they're not really that much cheaper than the metal frame pistols. So it begs the question, why would you get a polymer frame pistol when you can get a metal one? Especially when the weight difference actually isn't as much as you might think. So, yeah, that's my little spiel about CZ pistols. And man, they're just great values, for a metal frame pistol. So for controls and ergonomics, there's not a whole lot to say about it. It's a pretty simple, tried and true, proven design. You got your safety over here. You got slide lock release lever, mag release, and CZ75s are definitely one of those platforms that people like to race gun. And I've seen all kinds of crazy modifications for these things. You look at Cajun Gun Works and look at some of the race guns they've made, and they're absolutely crazy. Like, they'll have like huge freaking slide release levers, or they call them gas pedals. There'll be these huge levers sticking out here. Safeties will have these big old like thumb rests and things like that. And there's all kinds of crazy stuff you can do with CZ pistols that, honestly, if you ask me, it almost rivals the Glock in some way for like aftermarket accessories and really what you want to fine tune and do with your pistol. So, very, very customizable, very cool. It's just a great all-around gun. So, yeah, if someone is really looking for like, I'm looking for a 9mm pistol. I don't know what I want. I'd prefer to go with a full size because it's easier to shoot. Among the first things a lot of people would say is go with like a Glock 17, 19, something like that. But really, call it personal bias. I don't like Glocks that much. I like metal frame pistols because I grew up shooting 1911, so it's just what I'm used to. That's what I like. I like hammer-fired guns. I don't like strikers very much. That's just me. So I would definitely, for somebody who wants something that doesn't look like a brick, 2, doesn't handle like a brick, 3, has a better trigger, 4, is more customizable in the terms of like, grips without being permanent modifications, things like that. A lot of aftermarket support. I would absolutely recommend a CZ75 or other CZ steel framed or even the polymer framed pistols. CZ just makes great product, and I would say that out of the majority of the gun community out there, they like CZ. Soy guys or not, or hipsters or not, hipster guns, we could call it whatever you want. Honestly, there's just not a whole lot of people out there that don't like CZs, and there's a reason for that. And it's not just because of hype, and it's not just because my Glock perfection, okay? It's because these work, they're accurate, they look good. There's a whole lot of reasons. They're good value for the price. They're just great. So I would absolutely recommend one of these for a shooter who doesn't have a whole lot of experience, looking for a nice full-size 9mm pistol, and they even make these in 45 too, which is pretty cool. So it really, you can't go wrong with one of these is really what I'm trying to get at. So that's really my whole take on these things, and I'll try to get some shooting footage out. But the last time I was out shooting this thing, there was a guy next to me who was shooting a 308 AR with a very, very short barrel and a very loud muzzle brake, to the point where even his own camera stand was being knocked over by the muzzle blast. So I don't want to subject you guys to that. So I'll have to wait until next time I go out to the range to get some shooting footage with this thing, and give you guys a better shooting impression for this pistol, which I'll probably add on to the end of the shooting video, you know, because I've already drawn this video out quite a lot. So that all having been said, CZ75, great pistol, proven pistol, you know, great value, definitely recommend. And yeah, try one out for yourself if you haven't already. But you know, if you're like me and you just don't like the factory grip, try to find somebody who has some custom grips and try it out. Maybe you'll like it more, and you know, you'll fall in love with it just like I did. So yeah, ask your friends, talk to your friends, talk to the gun guy, you know, and try them out and see if it's for you. That's all I gotta say about that.